There are many theories as to why crop circles are made and how they're made. Well, today I'm thrilled to announce that Patty Greer, a filmmaker, is on the channel. Now, from 2006 to 2016, Patty produced 8 documentaries. Now, 5 of these were awarded with the EBE. She's visited over 100 crop circles just in the UK. So get ready for a really in-depth view and an understanding about what and why these crop circles are here. Patty Greer, it's an absolute honour to meet you finally. We've just literally had about 5 minutes of back and forth, bit of laughter. I can tell straight away you're a fiery lady. You've got a lot on your chest that you want to, get off. But I want to just start maybe at the beginning, maybe just before this sort of, I would assume, a life-changing thing happened to you. So can you tell us a brief little bit of history about you before this happened?
Hello, world. um, I was never into ufology. I was never an alien follower, but I did used to believe in doctors and dentists, and I trusted a bad dentist who poisoned me with mercury. And my hands got really full of cuts. I got so poisoned, and that was in 2004. And as a harpist, pianist, singer-songwriter, destroyed my career.
Oh no.
And I couldn't get the cuts off my fingers. So I was so desperate after going to every kind of doctor, healer. I mean, from here to Sedona, Arizona, but not to the UK. And I couldn't get healed in America because, well, we don't believe in it still today, still tomorrow, maybe. But in my desperation, I ran into some friends that looked so different. They were running a Unity church in Boulder. And I said, blah, 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 blah. Why do you look so different? I just got to stop. Why do I feel you look and feel different? And they said, we just got back from the crop circles in Wiltshire. And I was like, what's that? Where's that? I want to go. Whatever you did, I like it. And I'm going. So literally 6 weeks later, I packed up in 2006 and went to the UK with my hands in gloves and band-aids because I really suffered. And I'm
Mm.
21 years later, I'm still got cuts on my hands. Dentist is still free. We don't arrest bad people in America. Sorry. But it did take me to the UK crop circles. And I thought that I was going to heal. So that's what started me in 2006. And it was a very interesting introduction because we started in Glastonbury. And I went to the store that people said, oh, they know all about crop circles. It was this bookstore. So I had 14 printed images of crop circles that had already arrived in the UK that summer. And I was so excited. And they're folded in my purse. So I walk into the store with my daughter and my American accent, which they probably didn't like us because we had Bush back then, bad reputation. Sorry, little political. Anyway, I said, "Hi, we're from America," and they're like, "Yeah, we can tell. Nice,
Oh,
friendly."
really? That
Yeah.
surprises me. Whenever I hear Americans, I'm always really happy to hear Americans.
Well, see, I'm happy to hear you. I just
Okay.
love the sound of the English accent. I think it's like music to the ears. So we went in the store and I said, "Hi, we're here to see the crop circles. Can you guide us to any fresh ones?" And they said, "Oh, well, we haven't had any this summer." And I'm standing there with a purse full of images.
Mm.
And I said, seriously? Like within 50 miles of here, like here to Stonehenge, you haven't seen any? Nope. And so I pulled them out of my purse. I slammed them on the counter and I said, well, here's 14. Let me share with you. Look,
Mm.
look, look. And they're like, And I said, so what is it that is making you less than friendly? Hey, thanks for your help. So we left. We walk around Glastonbury, and of course, I see the store over there that says witchcraft. And my daughter's like, Mom, no.
Mm.
And joking aside, I said, let's just walk counterclockwise. We'll be fine.
Oh.
So I get in this store called Witchcraft, and there's three little ladies gabbing at the front, blah, having so much fun. And then two of them leave, and the lady comes to the back of the store. And she said, "Hi, can I help you?" "Oh, wait, I don't help anyone," and literally turned around and left. So my
What?
daughter and I are scratching our head like, wow, they're really different here, aren't they?
I'm really sorry that happened to you.
So we walked up to the counter and I said, "I'm not sure if you're kidding, but we're here to see the crop circles." And she said, "Oh God, wait." And she runs out the door and yells up the street, "Victoria, Vicky, come back." So these two little ladies came back and she says, "These two girls are from America and they are here for the crop circles. And you guys are going tomorrow morning at 10, meeting here in front of my store." So she introduced us and it was like kismet.
Mm.
And that's how we started. And all of a sudden, the magic just kind of spiraled around. And we met these ladies the next day and followed them to a crop circle in Wiltshire. And the directions that you get are so great in the UK. Okay, go to this road, look for a farm called this. There's a broken fence along the road, climb over it, and go 5 tram lines to the left, which are tractor trails,
Uh-huh.
5 tram lines to the left, and just keep walking. So we see the broken fence. We climbed over it, and it's kind of drizzly, rainy, cold. And
Mm.
we had parked on the side of A4 in Wiltshire. And so we've got two dogs and two huge Great Danes in a very small car. And the one lady said, "I'm going to stay with the dogs." And the other lady went with us. Turns out she wasn't just any Victoria, she was the Archdruidess of Stonehenge. And we have been fast friends ever since.
Wow.
So Victoria and me and my daughter go walking into this crop circle. And we just keep going. And because the ground is pretty flat and the wheat is very high, you can't see the formation
Mm.
unless you're on a hill looking down. So we were just too excited and we just kept walking in the rain and getting soaked all the way up to our waist. And we get to the middle of this formation and all of a sudden the hair stands up on our arms and tingles. And it was like chilling. And it wasn't just the cold and the wet, it was that we had entered some kind of hmm, I don't even know what to call it, a bubble of enhanced frequencies. It was so intense. And I turned around to see if they noticed it, and they were like, hmm. So I
Really?
said, "No talk. Let's just." And then we walked 10 feet further, and there it was, boom, meticulous, breathtaking, probably like what you saw when you went in your first one. You're walking through the
Absolutely.
wheat, no idea. And then it's this flawless swirl down, laid wheat and even walls without a hair out of place. Is that what you saw when you saw yours?
Pretty much, I think because when I went there, it was 3 or 4 days already, and there was a lot of people there taking photos, walking around. So there's a little bit of disruption around, but it was still absolutely unbelievable to look at. What I couldn't get over is, I mean, obviously we're going to get into the nodes and things like that in a second, but how it was weaved over, folded over itself, that was just peculiar because
Yeah.
it blows the theory out of the water about little old Barry with his stick and rope and stamping around and things, But
Doug
carry,
and Dave.
yeah, Doug and Dave, that's it, yeah, yeah. So,
Well,
but carry on, carry on. What
well,
else?
so my question, did you feel the enhanced energy? Did the hair stand up on your arms?
Uh, I got to be honest with you, no, it didn't.
Okay.
I was excited. I didn't feel anything, which I don't know whether I'm that type of person to be in tune with that or not. I don't know. It depends on who you are, but I was just, maybe it's because I had film mode on my head, creator
Right.
mode, investigation mode, and maybe didn't sort of understand the feelings what I was getting. However, I did feel very calm and relaxed.
Yeah. Well, that was your first, and you're going to
Mm,
have many because hopefully you'll have many. The most interesting answer I'm going to give before we're done is what happened to the crop circles. When I was going in 2007, 8, 10, 11, we had 175 crop circles every summer documented around the world. More than half of them were in the UK, in
mm,
Somerset and Wiltshire. It is the epicenter. It has been for decades. Since the 1980s, they've been documenting crop circles. And I'm going to give you two sites that still have great archives. You want to join the cropcircleconnector.com, and they're in the UK, but you want to join, that's 25 pounds or something to get in the archives, because then you can go back and look at the entire history of discoveries. And
Okay.
I sent them so many photos because I was always queen of the air. When nobody would fly because it was rainy and windy, there'd be a group of us at the airport waiting our turn, two different microlights, and the pilots once in a while would come in and go, nobody's going to want to fly. It's too rough unless somebody's crazy enough. And they'd always see me in the back going, I'll fly. So
What drove you to do that? I mean, obviously you visited the first crop circle, but what and you felt these, you felt this, energy, I should say. It was that it? Was that it? That's all that drove you to want more and more? There must have been more to it, right?
thank you. I almost forgot to finish the punchline of that particular crop circle, my first experience. So there I am in this crop circle with Victoria and my daughter, and we're looking at this meticulous nature, but in the middle, it was all chopped up. And it was like something, an animal had attacked it or a hacksaw. It was just all messy, but everything else was meticulous
Mm.
and tingly and pristine and shocking because I could feel so much. And I turned around, so could they. So now it's rainy and cold, and I'm over here in a corner, and Victoria's over there, and I pull out my pendulum and I'm asking, is this real? What is this thing in the center chopped up? And I turn around and she's running a pendulum too. So by the time we all met in the center again, my daughter said, okay, I'm cold. This is fun. You grown-ups enjoy yourselves. Do you mind if I go back to the car? And I could see across the field, and she was almost 20, so, you know. So she goes back, and I could see her getting back, and Victoria and I are now comparing notes. And I said, I get that it's a real crop circle and that a human did the damage. And she said, I thought the same thing, and I got that read. So all of a sudden, I hear this man screaming across the field, and we had walked in quite a ways, and I could hear him across, and I look over there, and my daughter had come into his presence, and Vicky's over there with the dogs and the cars, and this man is yelling at my daughter, and I flew like you would if your kid was,
Mm.
being threatened. So I wailed across the formation, and Victoria slowly came out the tram lines to meet me, but I got there panting to rescue my daughter. Luckily, a minute after she had outsmarted me. I hear the man yelling, you're on private property and I could shoot you or have you arrested and you have no reason to be here. And my daughter, so much quicker than me, said, Lo siento, señor, no entiendo inglés. And I thought, oh my God, that is so brilliant. So of course I walked up, hey, ¿qué pasó?
Yeah, yeah.
Hay uno problema? And I hear Victoria coming up from behind, and I thought, oh, I hope she hears us speaking Spanish. Sure enough, she did. Spoke a little Spanish. The man turned around angry with his white strap across his front, and as soon as he walked away, all three of us saw a hacksaw in the back of his purse. It was like a man purse carrying a hacksaw. And that man was the farmer that tore up his own crop. And in that moment, I went, oh my God, that crop circle was so real.
Yeah,
I was a
because
brand new
well,
beginner.
it's two things because one, obviously you with the hacksaw, he's trying to chop it up and everything like that, but the other thing was he wasn't trying to get anything out of it. If anything, he doesn't want anybody on his field,
That's
because
it.
the man-made ones, there might be an argument to say, well, maybe they're trying to get something out of this, money or advertisement or whatever they're trying to get, But that's two reasons why it could potentially have been real. And in your case, what you say is absolutely 100% real, right?
Well, because
And
I could
and as well
feel it.
as the feeling as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I was green. I knew nothing.
Mm.
I knew nothing about any of it. I just knew that I needed to heal my poor fingers so I could play my harp again. And that's all
Oh.
I cared about was just getting the mercury out of my system when doctors were choosing not to help us. So
And that
here
was
I
in
am,
2006, did you say?
24. Yeah,
Oh,
2006, I
2004.
went to the crop circle.
Uh-huh.
And so so we got back in our car and I went, now that was a lesson and a half. What a great start. I can't wait to see more of them. And my daughter's like, yeah, yeah, let's do some other things. And I just thought, I don't want to do anything else. So we had a great trip, but then I came back the next year for 9 weeks and the year after for 9 weeks. And I was absolutely a crappie, committed crappie. And I stayed in the epicenter, which is in Wiltshire. And there's all these little B&Bs, but you put yourself in the epicenter every day you wake up. Back then there were one, two, three new crop circles. It was over the top. We
Mm.
had so many crop circles when I was filming. And we also had real croppies. Like the same people were in the crop circle every day without fail. There was me, Barbara Lamb, Janet Osabard, Bert Janssen, Charles Mallet, who ran the research center, and Janet Osabard, I will tell your audience, did all the Fall of the Cabal documentaries. Now, she hadn't made movies before this. I never made movies before this. And this being a chapter of going in a lot of crop circles and shifting our frequency.
Mm.
Her documentaries are over the top. And then she disappeared for 5 days, and then they found her in the last few years. And that was a big loss. But in America, we, during the same time period, maybe a few years earlier, we lost all of our ufologists that were great researchers, four-star generals, granddaddy of ufology, owner of the largest UFO archive in the world. Boom. 2016, 17, 18, 19, they all died. And I got hit with a directed energy weapon and barely survived, but I survived. And then a few years later, uh, piece of crap, dude, put uranium in my garage, round two, and I got really sick. And I knew that I had been probably the most hacked UFO filmmaker in history. What they did to my films it must have been very expensive and time consuming for whoever it was. But I was so green, I had no
Mm.
idea why all of a sudden my $20 movies on Amazon, which are still there, um, were $750.63 from some guy in some other country. And there were 235 other stores selling my movies fraudulently. I mean, they went to a lot of effort. And I became a speaker at a lot of the America and Canadian UFO events. God, did I have fun traveling. It was so nice
Mm.
being able to tell people and show 100 or 200 images that I took of crop circles and then world premiere my movies. It was the most heavenly chapter. Not only being in the crop circles, but being able to bring that truth back. I still didn't know how they were happening, but I was winning a lot of awards because my movies were pretty and this and that. And then I got put on the cover of UFO magazine.
Hey, look at you.
I just saw it
Hey.
in my office and I thought, well, I'll just grab that. And
Wow.
my audience was really delighted, but the men of ufology really didn't like me because Wendell Stevens gave me his library for free. He knew that I was making real crop circle movies, that I was authentic, that I had no idea about the deep state. I was, there to heal my hands, dumbbell.
Mm.
And I stepped into so many amazing crop circles and I just kept filming. And the only reason I started making movies was I was so amazed that I wanted to bring it home to my friends and family. So I hired a film crew at the Glastonbury Crop Circle lecture hall, and they came and filmed with me. And that's when I made my very first movie, which is called The Wake Up Call. Anybody listening? And it's interesting because that's still very much the question. Anybody listening? And I say that because crop circles are messages. And they're very divinely orchestrated and organized in the field to deliver a message that everybody around the world can understand because it's a language we all speak.
Mm.
Pictures, pictograms, mathematics, sacred geometry. This is mathematics and sacred geometry. It's Fibonacci sequence, flawless mathematics, but there's 408 circles, and they happened on a very rainy night in Wiltshire. And Charles Mallet, this wackadoodle marvelous guy that owned the research center and luckily liked me, he told me that he'd walked the entire formation at 5 a.m. and it was totally rainy all night long. There was not one footprint. But for him to get around the outside of the formation to look for footprints, he said his boots were just the
Yeah.
wellies that
Yeah.
stick in the mud. I've had stick in the mud wellies also, and it's work to get
Yeah.
some distance. And he walked around this entire formation, and he said there wasn't one footprint. So
That's
this is real.
mad.
And this is phenomenal because the mathematics were immaculate.
Patty, can I just go back? I want to talk about that a little bit more, but I just want to go back just a little bit because you mentioned about certain friends of yours in the UFO community, including yourself. Can I just clarify that you, and I want to say claim, you are you suggesting that there was a premeditated two attacks on you?
I don't know how long they thought about it, but they definitely hit me.
So the
And
question the question I'd ask is why? Why do you? What is what? It's obviously a voice, okay? If let's just say hypothetically speaking, this is two premeditated attacks on you, because of the work that you've been doing. What is so important about these crop circles that the message needs to be, kept tight?
the science. The
Right.
science has never been told. And the benefits of the super seeds that are from the hit wheat and they continue to grow can save our food supply. And I didn't know until movie number 8, but I certainly learned when I was invited to the lab of William Levengood. But the reason I think they needed to quiet me or harm me or scare me, well, they obviously didn't know me very well, but it just made me resent them and hold up the mirror, and they didn't like that. So it continued. But I think in 2013, they were very clear that when my movies were just coming out, I'd only done 2 or 3 or 4. There was this banner that somebody hacked my website with that said in 2013, telling the truth in times of universal deceit is a revolutionary act. And they had the quotes backward. It's a George Orwell statement. So I told the truth and it pissed them off because I guess they think that Bill Gates should be making our food, you know, full of all kinds of needly wonders and appeal peels. So, I'm just guessing. I don't know because I don't feel hate,
Mm.
but I learned hate once I got wounded. And it was right after my last UFO gig. They tried to get me not to come. And I did go, and the audience loved it. And I sold a ton of movies. And then at the airport leaving, I was standing there and I took my boarding pass, said thank you. And next thing I know, I was on the floor like in a pool of jello. It was a nightmare. And I was on the floor in the airport like wiggly goo, and I could barely breathe. I didn't know what happened, but I knew that somebody had some kind of a device at the airport that chose to harm me after my gig, and they got away with it. And it took a wheelchair to get me out of there and onto the plane. And then it took a wheelchair to get me off the plane. And here I am, to be honest, 7 years later. I had both my hips replaced last year
Wow.
from the fall.
Did
So it
uh,
really
uh,
harmed me, but I kept going, and I was so stubborn
yeah.
that I didn't want to admit that something that awful had happened.
Okay.
And then couple years later, I was feeling threatened again, so I looked around for somebody that I thought could share a house and protect me. And so I asked this guy in Denver if he knew anybody, not even thinking he was ex-CIA. There's no ex. And he introduced me to the creep, and the creep shared a home with me with his huge weapons and his weather modification thing in the attic. And then when I told him I was done being protected, thanks, you're a creep, he put uranium in my garage and left. So he was super creepy, and he was probably working for the enemy, or he was mentally ill, and or MK Ultra, I think is the truth. And I think that I was set up again in 2019 to pass away because I have known too much. And I'm authentic like you. I don't make stuff up. I don't need to exaggerate because I was in more than 100 crop circles and I know they're real. How do I know? Well, I brought back this incredible evidence. Look at these curly, wavy,
Oh, the nodes there, yeah.
bent nodes, but they're like a curve rather than a bend.
Mm.
I find these really fascinating, and I've got bottles of them around the house. And these are wheat heads from the centers of some of the crop circles that I visited. There's some more 90-degree bends.
Wow.
And yeah, and I used to eat them, not even thinking about the GMOs, because back in 2005, we weren't that aware. I mean, 2006, 7, 8, 9. I was just like eating crop circle wheat. It was so sweet
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
middle, and I never got sick, so perhaps it was okay. But I had my little plastic case and my scissors. So every time I'd go in the middle of a crop circle and I'd lay down and experience everything that there was, which is how I rolled, I would cut three from every center, and I'd put them in this little plastic box, and then I bring them home and put them in my glass jars. But this particular time, I went to a crop circle from my B&B in Glastonbury, and I had this plastic strawberry thing that I ate the strawberries, rinsed it out, and then put the crop circle wheat with nodes up in the top of the closet of this little B&B room. And a few days later, after I'd hit all the crop circles and I kept putting little things in, I went to grab my thing of wheat, and it was all pink popcorn, foamy fungus, mold. It was,
Oh,
ugh.
yeah.
And I had to throw it all away. And that's when I went, oh, great. Wonder what my stomach looks like. I've been
Mm.
eating this. So, yeah. So,
Right.
it was an interesting kind of give and take with thinking, who would do that? Why would they do that? Why would they? Anyway,
Yeah.
it was starting back then, but I brought home not only those, but also this. I don't know if you found, but you're going to be looking in every crop circle. There are these stones that are chalk on the outside that are blasted open.
Wow.
All of the stones
Okay,
in the crop
okay.
circles were blasted open.
Okay. Wait, so I want to get, because we're starting to touch on the I would say the scientific part of the crop circles, but I one thing that really interested me on your movie, your documentary, was, and you just mentioned him, Dr. Levengood. Now you have, am I getting this right? You met him but didn't meet him. You met him in a very different way than most people, right? Can
I
you?
met him in a very strange way a year after he died. And I never believed in walk-ins or comebacks, but he taught me that they definitely exist. And again, I was totally green. I had made 7 crop circle movies. I was just, prancing little American, going to Canada and all these places to speak on crop circles. And then I went to this gig in Michigan with all these healers around the lake and the psychics and the booths and the tents with the healing things. And so I was doing my talks and a man came up with me to me and said, "I'd like to take you somewhere tonight. Will you join me?" And I was like, no, I don't know you. I'm in another state. So that's not going to happen. But if you
Mhm.
want to introduce me to your friends and I can ask questions about you, perhaps another night. I have to speak in the morning. So I asked about him, and they said, "Oh yeah, he comes every year with her, and he's a good guy." So the next night, sure enough, I'm sitting on the couch at the end of a long day, and he says, "How about now?" And I said, "You know what? Let's go." I didn't know where he was going to take me,
Mm.
but he took me to this farm about half an hour away, and we're just chit-chatting friendly. And the lady's name was Penny Kelly. And she and I and this guy sat there for 4 hours eating cherries,
Oh,
talking about
wow.
all kinds of things. But we never, ever talked about crop circles. Now it's 2 in the morning, and I said, Stan, you got to take me back to the hotel. I've got a gig in the morning, got to go. And so so I get up and I said to her, "Oh, I brought a movie that I'd like to give you." And I gave her this one, which is called Crop Circle Update, The Wake Up Call. Now, this is a newer version of my first, The Wake Up Call. Anybody listening? So
Hmm.
I thought my series was going to be The Wake Up Call, which is crop circles. And this one started winning awards. It won Best Musical Score for all my original music that I couldn't play anymore with my poor fingers.
Oh,
And it won Best Feature Film. And here's the bad boy right here. I've got
wow.
lots of
Oh,
pages
wow.
now.
Look at that. That's so cool.
Isn't that
That's
naughty?
so
And
cool. Yeah.
it's an alien with a movie camera.
Yes, that's brilliant. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, they're heavy. They're made of pure.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of them right over there. I've got
Oh, hey.
spread around the house. But it was like I was having so much fun being the crappie girl and
Yeah.
then going back to England and bringing back a new movie.
Mm.
And I was never trained with a camera. I still couldn't tell you what any of the parts were. I just knew how to open the door on my 15-pound huge camera. Like, had I known I could get a phone and just carry a 1 pound thing. But no, I had this huge beast. My tripod weighed as much as me. It was just cruel.
Mm.
Luckily, I had a man with me a few times, but the rest of the time, I literally had a dolly
Mm.
hauling all my gear into the formations.
Wow.
But it was so worth it. And then Penny hands me her book as a trade for the movie. And I said, "Oh, you're a writer?" And she looks at Stan and she said, "You didn't tell her?" And he said, "Mm-mm." So I look at her book and I went through the pages. I was like, "Crop circle nodes, what are they doing in your book?" And she looks at me and she says, "You really don't know who I am?" And I said, "No, you're Penny Kelly. That's all I know. And you have a farm." And I looked at the cover and it said, "By William Levengood and Penny Kelly." And I went, "No way.
Mm.
You knew the doctor, Levengood, the proof science?" I didn't even know much back then.
Mm.
But she said, "I was his secret lab partner for the last 16 years of his life. He died last year, and he's still making such a ruckus in my back room at night."
I bet you went,
And I
what?
thought, that's out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she said, "No, he's still really active." And I thought, okay, it's 2 in the morning. Please take me back. Now I'm delirious. I
maybe
have
maybe
spent
I should have
four
cut back on the
hours
cherries.
I spent 4 hours and didn't know I was with like somebody that I could have learned so much from.
Mm.
I was kind of like, So she said his wake is in a month at his lab, and I would love for you to come. And I said, "I'm there. I will be back in a month." So I go back to the hotel, and the gentleman lets me out in front, and I'm watching these two ladies at the door that were the head psychics of the big gig that I was at. And they're both nodding the whole time I'm walking up, and one of them's laughing, and she goes, "Good one." And I'm like, "Just me. Hi." She said, "Wow. who's that big tall man next to you? And I thought Stan got out of the car, and I'm looking around and I said, I don't know. Do you see someone? She said, yeah, and he has a message for you. Can I give it to you? And I thought, I'm tired. It's late. Sure. She said, he's tall. He's got silver goatee, gray hair. And he said, I want you to know I orchestrated this and I'm really glad you're here. And I said, I have
Lift up
no
a little
idea
bit.
who that
Sorry,
is.
lift that up a little bit more. Sorry.
I said, I have no idea who it is. And she said, well, he wanted me to give you that message. And I went, oh my God, it couldn't be. I ran back to the parking lot and I'm throwing my arms around, hoping he'll look in the rear view because he was leaving. And he did. And he backed up. And now I'm panting because I ran hard. I was like, what did William Levengood look like? What did the doctor look like? And he said, tall, silver goatee, silver hair. Why? And I said, he's here. He's here. And Stan just goes, uh-huh. Yep. And I got goosebumps on my legs right now, remembering that moment. And I said, how can you not be freaked out? I'm freaked out. And he said, because I've done all of Penny Kelly's intuition courses. I expect this. And I was just, and he drove away, and I was just like, and it takes a lot to get me
Mm.
dumbfounded, but I was like, oh, that's out there. That's out there. It could be true. Oh my God. So I go in, I go to sleep. I had amazing dreams. I did a great talk the next day. A month later, I drive back to Michigan to Penny Kelly's house. She let me stay for 3 days. I stayed for 3 weeks and made my final film, Crop Circle Diaries, after spending the time with her and having my mind completely shredded. Penny Kelly sat there with me every morning at coffee, explaining William Levengood's theory on how crop circles are made the true way,
Right.
how
So
they're really happening.
for 7 whole films, you were working through it yourself, making these amazing documentary films, thinking you're, like you say, like the queen croppie, and then all of a sudden it's almost like you've been broken down into pieces, and then learning again all the whole stages, right?
I had never thought I was the queen crappie. I just thought I was so devoted, I was out of my gourd.
I think
So,
most people would have called you the queen croppie of some sort,
well,
right? Yeah.
me and Janet and Barbara Lamb were definitely the regulars, and we were there every summer without fail. We didn't miss one formation. And after I did 2 or 3 formations one day, this guy throws a rock up to my B&B deck, and came out and I was like, "What? I can barely move." And he goes, "New crop circle," and he just throws out this location, and I was like, "No, I can't." And he goes, "New, fresh." And I was like, I'll be down in a minute. Oh God, did I hurt? Because when you walk in formations, you walk miles
Yeah,
and you're
yeah,
doing it with big ass boots. So, it's like, and then you have to climb back up the hill, whatever. So
yeah.
I was just hardcore. And it was because it was so magical. How couldn't you when you're there?
Mm.
So I go back a month later to Penny Kelly's farm because I wanted to be part of the wake of William Levengood. I had made all these movies on crop circles, and I had won all these awards at the International UFO Congress, but I still didn't know how crop circles were made. And I
Mm.
hate to say your audience probably doesn't either. And a lot of the people that claimed to be experts during the time when I was filming, I didn't want to film them because I knew that they were inauthentic.
Mm.
And I don't want to say a filmmaker snob because it wasn't snobby. It was just
You
intuitive.
Yeah,
I was an
intuition.
intuitive filmmaker, and I only wanted to interview people telling the truth.
Yeah.
So
It was your
it was.
direction. You could see your direction that you wanted to go, right?
Plus, when you're in these crop circles, I have to say, I felt kind of out of my gourd most of the time. It's almost like you're on a different high
Mm.
because you're not in your normal frequency. If you're going in formations and staying in them for hours at a time, digging through the wheat like you did to look, is the node bent, broken?
Mm.
extended, elongated, burned. Like, what are the nodes looking like so I can tell if it's human made or real?
Yeah.
And the human made ones with boards and ropes are very easy to dissect because when you're on the ground crawling on your knees, every 3 feet or 2 feet, depending on how tall the person is running the boards and ropes, it's a board, wooden, with two holes in the end, and there's a string on that's stuck with a knot through, so you can put it through the hole. And then they carry this board with the ropes and they stomp down the wheat and then they lift up, walk 2 feet, 3 feet, stomp down again, and that's how they make human crop circles.
Mm.
That's how Doug and Dave, these morons in the 80s, that showed, oh, we're doing all of them, and everybody went, oh, okay.
Yeah, I
So
featured a clip of that on one of my videos recently.
try making one, boys, for the cameras. And yeah. So anyway, God bless them on their journey, but I wouldn't have interviewed them either. So there were amazing people there. It was just endless
Mm.
opportunities. But for me, it was about filming the formations. It wasn't about the people.
Mm.
And I didn't read books or watch other movies because I was in it.
Mm.
And I was so dedicated to being in every crop circle every summer while I was there that I didn't have questions. So when I went back to the wake at Penny's house, we went to bed that night. The wake was the next day. And we had driven across the state of Michigan, which is like a big hand, and it's a few hundred miles back and forth. But she had done it to do the research with Lefty, which is what they called William Levengood at the
Oh,
lab,
okay.
a few days a week. Like she was so dedicated to working with him that she did the big drive. So we did the big drive. And unfortunately, this lady that wasn't so evolved got his estate. It should have gone to Penny because you saw in my movie, Crop Circle Diaries, that I actually filmed William Levengood's lab and
Mm.
all of his research papers.
Yeah.
And there was this guy named John Ward that was documenting everything. I hope he put it in computer form, but he was documenting every paper that Lefty had ever done. And the lady came in and she saw me with my big camera and she goes, oh, no, 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 that's not okay. This is a wake. And I was so embarrassed. It was like, sorry.
Mm. Yeah.
And so as soon as she left, I said, can I just use my little snapshot camera? And she said, well, okay, just a few. And so she goes and meets with Penny, and they were planning the wake. And I got on it with John. And I set up this little teeny snapshot to do video. And I go, John, tell me what you're looking at and tell me all about it. So it's in my movie Crop Circle Diary. So now you've got the real archive of everything Lefty wrote. And he wrote more scientific documents than anyone on earth about crop circle science. He absolutely knew because he studied plants and soils since the 1950s. And
Right.
then when it came the turn of the century, he somebody sent him some crop circle nodes. That was it. He left plants and soil behind, and
Wow.
all he wanted to do was study crop circles.
Okay.
And so, um, yeah,
So tell me then.
brilliant.
Okay, so you're there. You're spending a lot of time with Penny. Okay. You're probably like a sponge now, absorbing all of this new information, right? So, can you explain to me what it is then that you learn as best you as best you can? You know.
Yeah. Well, what I learned the night I got there, good night, Penny. She left. I was just starting to doze, thinking about what a amazing time I was in, and I saw Lefty walk through the wood door. It was a big white wooden door, and I saw his body come through it. And I just thought, okay, I'm losing my mind. I just saw him walk through the friggin' door, and he came right up to my bed. Now, Penny told me he's still causing havoc. The guy
Mm,
came
yeah.
up
Yeah.
to my bed in spirit. I saw him, I'm sure of it. And he said to me the same words, I'm really glad you're here. I did orchestrate this. And I just held the sheets up and I stared at him and I said, thank you. That's all I could say. Thank you for choosing me to do this for you. And the fist fight that I had with the industry was a nightmare, and it was the same nightmare that he dealt with when he delivered his peer review papers to become a PhD. And because he was tested by a terrible person that was one of the judges of the PhD panel, the guy was so jealous of what he knew, he said, well, here's a formation, here's a mathematical thing, and nobody can figure it out. You can't either, but if you do, then we'll pass you. Totally against the rules of PhD, but the guy was really jealous of Lefty, and Lefty tortured himself. He said he didn't eat for days, he didn't sleep for days, and then he answered it and turned it in. And the guy was so angry
Mm.
that Lefty figured it out. And he knew that Lefty had a little twitch, which was if you get in his face and you yell, he starts to stutter. And so the guy got in Lefty's face and he made him stutter.
Oh.
And then he went back and he goes, see? And Lefty's just totally out of his
Mm.
element because the
Mm.
guy was in his face and he knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah.
And Lefty couldn't recover in time and he didn't get his PhD. Now, he actually said a little while later when he was invited to do huge speeches because he was the only guy that knew about crop circle science. And it was, God, he was invited to do something really big. And at the bottom it said, you know, with your PhD. And he wrote them and said, I'm sorry, I didn't get my PhD because I was tricked at the last minute. And they said, I'm trying, the Academy of Science, National Academy of Science, it was some huge, very respected organization. They said, Dr. Levengood, we consider you a doctor. Even though they didn't give you the paperwork, you did the research, you know the information, and you can come and speak. So a lot of people referred to him as Dr. William Levengood, but the demon squad of
Mm.
crapola people said, oh, he's not a doctor. He never got a name. And this is the only thing they can ever hold still tomorrow against William Levengood. He's not a doctor. He lied. They lied. It's just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
don't, you guys are so obvious. It's just kind of like what I'm dealing with in America
Mm.
now,
So,
watching what they're doing.
so, you know, I would like to talk about these nodes, and because when I went into that crop circle for the first time, it was something that I found out that in order to see if one of the reasons why this could be real or man-made is looking at the nodes, and lo and behold, when I went there, these nodes were bent, which it's just like, oh, this is absolutely incredible, absolutely amazing. Now there are some people though that I've seen actually in my comments that apparently, and I'm not claiming this is what it is because I think that later on, and I know you're going to explain to me why it's not, but I just want to throw that in there because there's a few comments that when a crop is pushed over due to sunlight, it tries to come back up again. It tries to bend back up. That explains the bend on the nodes. But I think that what we're probably going to discuss now is why that's not just only the case, because there's so many other things involved with these bent nodes, right? So I just wanted to put that theory into play a little bit so we can just talk about that.
There's a big difference between laid flat crop by boards and ropes, and it dies once it's laid down and bent and broken. Every 3 feet, there's a line of broken wheat. That's human made.
Yeah.
Really easy to see.
Yeah.
You walk a little further, easy to see. You get on your knees, they're all bent and elongated.
Yeah.
And a big ball sometimes, and it's burned where the steam came out. Now you're going, wait. Why would there be burned node? And that's when Penny started training me in the morning about the real science from William Levengood. It literally gave me a headache. Now, I'd made 7 films. I thought I knew so much other than how they're really happening. Now I'm sitting with Penny Kelly, who absolutely knew. And she, on the 3rd day, said, Patty, Don't make me repeat it. And I said, Penny, my head hurts. You're actually stretching my brain. Tell me again, how are crop circles happening? And I'd literally hold my head like this. Just tell me again. It's that hard to let go of all these years of what I thought I knew to accept something that I'd never considered in my life. So I hope your audience can handle a headache
Okay.
or a worthy of a headache
Before
bit
you
of that.
before you get into how they are actually made, what was your first idea of how they were made? Just briefly. How did you think they were made before?
I don't think I ever thought about how they were made.
Really?
I
After
was
seven
just,
movies, you didn't think how they were made?
well, I never saw a UFO.
Hmm.
I did see the balls of light many times. I made a movie called Orbs and Light Beings that cost me my last relationship. He
All
was
right.
there with me in England in 2009 and 2010, and he watched me in England sitting at the research center like a friggin' magnet, and they just come up. And they don't know I'm a filmmaker. They just come up and tell me their story, or I approach them and then they come up. And so I knew that it was balls of light involved in creating the crop circles because I had all that footage. And I got another one sent to me of balls of light in France creating a crop circle that I haven't seen in anybody else's film, but it was in mine. So I've got two different balls of light making crop circles instantly.
Mm.
And what Penny described was something that I never would have thought of because we keep thinking, oh, it's military, from satellites. They've got the pattern, then they just blast it down. Nah. There's Doug and Dave, there's Team Satan, there's Team Stupid, there's, the teams that go in and they make crop circles and they think, oh, we really tricked them, all
Mm.
those, I didn't buy any of that. And then, so the real science is really hard to swallow because most people don't give the earth the credit she deserves. Now, we can say God is a he or she, the earth is a he or she. Don't get mad at me for calling the earth a she. And, I just think it's Mother Earth.
Hmm.
And Mother is usually a she until the last few years. So, anyway, so what I learned from Penny was that these balls of light that we're seeing that make crop circles in seconds are not UFOs. They are not aliens in a little spaceship.
Okay.
They are not orbs from another planet. What we have is, and this is scientifically proven with magnets and crop at the lab of William Levengood over the 16 years, they found, and I'm going to read his exact words because sometimes I just have to read his exact words
Yeah.
to really explain it properly. But what I learned was that crop circles are initially coming out of the earth in counter rotating vortices of spinning plasma fields. So you've got a field, late night, and all of a sudden there's a breeze. And you've got these two vortices. A vortex is a V of energy. Now, these are spinning plasma vortices with distinct boundary conditions of different frequencies. And what they do is they come into the field, They spin and spin and spin. And when they get to the exact frequency that they need to deliver the message that they were brought there to deliver, what you see is a spinning ball of light at the bottom of this vortex.
Oh, okay.
So a ball of light is at the base of a spinning vortex of plasma that's been sent with intention to deliver a specific message from Mother Earth.
So like it's almost like a cone of energy, and at the bottom where it's absolutely rapid, almost like you say a tornado, that's where the glow happens. That's where the ball of plasma happens, right?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
And what happened was I finished my first film, and I had this young editor from a little local newspaper, and I hired this kid, and I said, we're going to do something real different. I had a film crew in England come and film me and my friends in the crop circles. This was my first movie in 2007. I didn't film it myself. I got the crew from the Glastonbury Festival, and they said they'd come, and I couldn't believe it when they got there. We did an 8-hour day, and a few hours into the night, none of these UK guys from Glastonbury had ever stepped in a crop circle.
Hmm.
So, you know,
Well, I've got to be
it's
honest with
nothing
you. I used to live in Somerset for years, most
and
mo-
never.
most of my childhood, and it was something that's like, obviously what doesn't interest you doesn't interest you, right? I suppose until you get there and it interests you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was all it took for me was going in one crop circle and seeing little teeny girl hairs
Mm.
stand up on my arm and tingles, and I was like, "Oh my God, I love this."
So
So yeah,
so we've got the I would say the tool that creates it, these vortexes with the orbs. That's I would in my terminology, I would call that the tool. But where's the brain? How does it create these perfect images? Where does that come from?
so I said to my editor, "Wow, we just finished my first movie. This is crazy. Let's go out on the deck, take a break." Turn everything off, cool the gear down because we've been at it for hours. Shut the gear off. We're walking out, and I looked over my shoulder and I said, "What's that blue orb doing on the monitor?" Big, huge blue orb with all this pattern in it. And he comes up and he looked and he said, uh, monitor's unplugged from the wall. I have no idea what that is. And all of a sudden, my whole body lit up, tingles. Literally, the hair went up on my arms in Boulder, Colorado, USA. And I went, "Oh my God, they're here." He said, "Who?" And I said, "Never mind." I didn't want to freak him out. I said, "Whoever's making the crop circles that woke me up at 3 every morning," which is how I edited my films, always at 3 a.m. I was just like, "Oh no, no, I just need to sleep." And I wasn't allowed.
Mm.
I got up, and in the morning, sometimes I would just have notes that I wrote at 3. And I was like, "What the heck? I don't even remember that. Thank God I wrote it like, hmm." So there was something working through me, but here I am now editing. And I said to the guy, uh, "Light it back up." And he said, "I thought we were going to take a break." And I said, "Something's going on." Turn the gear back on. Go back to that footage where the two balls of light at Oliver's castle lay that crop circle down in seconds. Everybody has seen it since 1996, and all the big boys of ufology are like, "Oh, it's fake. It's fake. Oh, it's
Oh,
fake."
I've featured that video a few times on my channel, and
Yeah.
that is absolutely amazing. That thing,
Yes.
for 90, like my argument, 1996. Yeah, we had some sort of editing ability, but that is just flawless. If the camera was stationary and absolutely not moving, possibility it could have been played with, manipulated. But this is a camera shake, it's happening in real time. It's incredible. But go on, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it was incredible.
Mm.
So I said to the editor, "Play it back for me." And he goes, "Okay." And I said, "Now reverse it." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "I don't know." And I was hearing, "Reverse it." And so he reversed it and we're watching. And I said, "Slow it down." He said, "How slow?" And I said, "I don't know, 30%. Ooh, why did I say that? Do it." So he slowed it down, reversed it. 30% slower. And all of a sudden I yelled, "Stop!" Oh my God. And there was a communication between the two balls of light that laid down the Oliver's castle in seconds. And I found the communication and I yelled so much the poor guy almost fell off his chair. And I said, "Is that a glitch?" And he went back and forth and every quarter of a second. And he said, "No, that's interestingly part of the footage." And I said, "I just proved that this crop circle is real and that those balls of light at the base of the vortices, I didn't know back then, but that they had communicated. That I knew because you've got a ball and a ball and this binary code between them. And it was totally decipherable. And everybody's saying, "Patty, what is the message?" And I said, "It's obviously the formation they laid down. The five
Has it
balls,
actually been
center
decrypted though?
circle."
The binary code has that. What's the words?
It's not words, it's a code for the image of the
Oh,
pictogram,
okay, okay,
picture.
yeah, okay.
So what we have here is a direct communication from the earth, information from the earth herself to humans. And anything, anyone, any entity flying over the planet that looks down at that farm parcel in England and says, "Oh, look at that, a crop circle message." So, that one was a very simple formation, but it was one of the only ones that some guy filmed. And his name was John Waby or John Whaley, depending on what story you read. And then he went missing.
Hmm.
But my friend Mark was at the Barge Inn, which is the bar back then where all the croppies went. And he was there the day that John Waby walked in with his footage yelling, "I filmed a crop circle being filmed. I got it. I got it." And then all these people came in, and unfortunately, probably somebody that shouldn't have got it in their hand and got off with it. And when he got it back, it was a little different, kind of like one of my films that was removed from the post office in Boulder, Colorado. One of my masters was changed. They actually stole it through the post office. The work that's been done to suppress crop circles can only be for one reason, in my opinion. Um, Not only are they real, but they're creating seeds that can save the food supply for our planet. And I think that's really why I've had to tolerate unbearable hacking and rudeness and jealousy and fraud
Mm.
and suppression. Looking today, at crop circles on YouTube, it was like, I'm not anywhere, which is fine. I've gone quiet after I got wounded twice and survived. I was like, yeah, I don't want anything to do with that field. And all the guys in my movies, pretty much all of them got killed or died, coincidentally, in a very short period of time in America. And they were all replaced by bad actors. Like it happened really fast, and then I got hit. Um, and then I got poisoned with uranium. So I knew that there was a deep state that destroyed ufology and that was really trying to hide crop circle science. But what we have here is a beautiful um, phenomenon where the seeds, once they get hit with these frequencies, they bend. Sometimes they stretch, which is called elongated node, but the wheat continues to live, or the corn, or the barley. It continues to live. Now, the ones that are stomped on with wooden boards and laying on the ground sometimes come up with the sun, like you were saying.
Mm.
So what?
Yeah.
Man-made. But the ones that are real crop circles, they are bent and they don't stand up with the sun. They stay bent, but they continue to grow, which is incredible
Mm.
at a horizontal level.
And you also mention about how this is heated from inside, right? The moisture, it heats up. Can you explain?
Yeah.
Can you
You
explain
got
about
to
that?
hear Penny. You got to hear Penny Kelly describe it. She's a lot better than I. But basically, um, plants are what do they call plastic? Cellulose.
Mm.
the wheat and the barley are cellulose. And so it's kind of like plastic. And they're full of liquid because it gives them life. And they shoot for the sun and they keep going up and up and up. But to strengthen the crop, every little bit, there's like an elbow. We have
Mm.
a wrist, we have an elbow, we have a shoulder, that's an arm. They've got node, node, node on their arms of crop. And so when it gets hit and bent and continues to grow, that's truly phenomenal.
Mm.
But not only did they grow, they actually became super seeds with the delivery of the final punchline, which is the head of the crop and the mature seeds. Now, what caused it to bend was something about the spinning vortices of plasma spinning really fast, two of them always, and they communicate. The field goes down in seconds, but it's hot.
Mm.
It's spinning heat in these vortices that come out of the earth. So the liquid inside the crop is heated to the point where sometimes it turns into steam and almost boils. And that's what knocks 100,000 of them over at the same time and blows out the nodes or
That's
elongates the nodes. And it's in a fraction of a second. This entire field goes foomp
mm.
into a flawless, gorgeous formation.
That's like microwave, right?
No,
Right. Okay.
microwave, which they tried to do, Doug and Dave, Ancient Aliens, BBC, they're out there with their microwaves and they're going to make a crop circle and it kills the wheat.
Oh,
But
okay.
this wheat does not die. Crop circles go like this, and the seeds themselves become so potent because they have to work twice as hard because the plant is bent and they're growing not toward the sun, but to the side. So they become really powered
Mm.
up and they grow a lot more crop and a lot more nutrition for each plant. And that's what they proved in the lab. So they took all this crop and they started experimenting with plasma frequencies because they knew that if you can recreate what's going on in crop circles, you could probably make a machine that manipulates the frequencies. And they brought it down to the fact that after experimenting with magnets and everything at the lab for years, they figured it was charge density plasma. Now, I don't know what that means, but I saw the machine that they re engineered and they called it charge density plasma. And I saw it in the lab, and when that lady wasn't looking, I was like, snap, 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 under the table on the side. I was
Mm.
like, oh my God, was I fast. So, yeah, the seeds are growing 30 to 400% more food and biofuel with up to 75% more nutrition per plant.
That's
This is huge.
crazy.
Huge. This is why I think they've been hiding crop circles all these years and sending out the big boys to lie and to say, oh, they're all fake. Go home, everybody. But William Levengood didn't go home. And he was being sent all these nodes from different crop circles in England.
Mm.
What really surprised me was he was also sent crop circle nodes, plant stalks from America. And he said the American crop circles were actually more highly vibrating than the English ones, which I never knew. And it's because he
Yeah,
said
I've
there's,
actually made a note of that. Uh, the crop circles in the USA are stronger. They have a stronger magnetical charge,
yeah,
electromagnetic charge. Sorry.
yeah. And I've got so many answers because I did watch your shows. I wanted to see who you liked, and I'll be very polite about who I don't believe. But I think that we've had a lot more phonies than real croppies, misleading the public because we have the ability to change the food source back to organic when we bring the seeds back to their full fruition.
Does that
And we have
have
the ability.
does that have anything to do with the soil as well? Because I do know that over years and years of basically ripping the soil full of their all the nutrients are like vegetables, things like that, have got less and less vitamins and minerals and things like that. Now, because isn't isn't there some sort of reaction to the soil as well if these crop circles happen? That the soil gets something happens to the soil. Is that correct? Am I right?
Well, what they have found, which is really strange, is iron oxide has fallen into the soil. And in my movie, Penny showed me these images of a leaf off one of the plants where they had peeled the leaf away from this stiff red iron oxide
Mm,
that had hardened. And it actually had the veins of the leaf and the shape of the leaf. And that has to be 1200 degrees Fahrenheit to be blowing through a field as liquid and to grasp onto the back of a leaf and not burn it.
mm,
It's so miraculous. I mean, all of it is like kind of over the top to understand, but I saw the peeled piece
yeah.
and the leaf pattern, so it had to be 1200 degrees, which is obviously what bent and blew and made it go like that. But here we have the ability to save our food supply. And again, I'm so redundant with that. And we are also at a point where it's about time for people to start listening to the sacred messages of the earth. And when I look at 150 to 175 crop circles documented every year in so many countries, this year we've had three.
Mm.
Last year we had a total of eight. Something really changed.
So let me just talk because this brings us on now. Something I made a note here, and I've just put a note of saying the evolution of the messages in crop circles because you mentioned originally there were things like fish and trees and things like that, but it seems like as the years and the decades have gone on, it seems to be more about technology or love, or there's different messages throughout the years. Is that right?
I think it's been a mix of messages the whole time.
Right.
And again, they deliver in a language we all understand: mathematics, sacred geometry, pictograms, pictures. We can all recognize and get the message. Like at the turn of this century, there was a huge alien face and a binary code,
Mm.
big disk next to it.
Yeah.
Now, there is a disk that's a code that was read by scientists and computers at 2001 or 2, the alien face and the disk. And it landed in a field, not a coincidence, right next to a huge telecommunication tower. I
Really.
sent you the photo. So, in my opinion, the mother's very clever. She said, okay, here's a very important message. And she sent it out the year after 9/11.
Right.
So, after 9/11, the next summer, we had the alien face and the disc. And the message, in my opinion, was timely, precise, and accurate. And the message was, let me see if I can remember it. Beware the bearers in binary code. Beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. Believe there is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit closing.
Mad, isn't it? In binary. That's absolutely incredible.
The next year, in Chilbolton, there was another phenomenal binary code because the mother goes, okay, the humans are reading it. Again, I might be making people mad because they don't believe the earth is conscious or alive. Maybe they think we're growing the forests and making the water for the oceans. I don't know. I'm not going to, you know, go into God talk, but I do believe the earth is alive and well and has been sending us this information only because I've gone and looked at hundreds and hundreds of crop circles. And it's kind of like reading a book, when you take the time. But all of a sudden, all these sacred geometric patterns, which is mostly what we see, and a sacred geometric pattern is a center dot, and then everything that's here is mirrored over there. Everything that's here is mirrored over there. So basically, you've got a mandala that's got the same pattern coming out from the center. Now, a lot of people think, oh, nice, sacred geometry. But I took it a step further when I met this wackadoodle named Rod from Holland. He started writing me saying, I love your films and I'm going to take you to the next layer. So I was like, okay, I'm game. So he takes these crop circles and he sketches them on his computer and then he spins them. And all of a sudden they completely change form.
Oh,
And
okay.
I'm looking at this spinning sacred geometric crop circle going, lift off. Oh my God, that's propulsion. That is so obviously. And then some of them you spin them, but then he did the anti-gravity trick of taking the center and going in the opposite direction. So now you've got a crop circle with the center going in one direction and the rest of it going in the opposite direction. And my eyes are going out of my brain like, oh my God, that is, and again, I don't know anything. I'm just saying intuitively, I felt like I was looking at lighting schematics of ships,
Mm.
lighting schematics of whatever their vehicles are, plus liftoff propulsion. And it took spinning the sacred geometric crop circles. And then when he did the spinning the opposite direction on the interior, it was like, oh, my brain hurts. And I showed in a few of my movies. The one I think I did, the long one of his work, is called The Shift Has Hit the Fan. Shift has hit the fan. And I did show the spinning crop circles and the counter rotating crop circles. But here we are. And now the big boys of ufology are going, oh, Patty Greer thinks she found this communication between the two balls of light. Wah, wah, wah. You know, there's not real crop circles, they're all fake, and go home now. So I just kept ignoring them. And sure enough, in 2010, was with my man and we walked into a crop circle with my huge camera kit and there's this group of people and I'm like, oh God, move you guys. And over across the formation of all these people sitting was Stephen Greer. And he
Yes.
looked at me
No
and I
relation, I should
looked at
add.
him.
No relation.
Huh?
No relation, I should add.
No. No, a lot of people have made up, oh, Patty got those awards because she's Stephen's wife. She got it easy. And it's like, I don't know him. He's not my husband.
Oh, that's
And
Stephen in the background, right, mate?
well, there he was, and he'd seen my work and I'd seen his work, but it wasn't like we ever interacted. So there we were in a crop circle, and I was like, oh God, when are you guys leaving? Because I go in the center and I film from the center of every formation. So for me, it was like a burden. But he said, oh, ladies and gentlemen, this is Patty Greer. And I was like, oh, he knows me. And he
Wow.
went on, he was very positive and said great things about my films, which was really nice. So he said, please join us. So we sat down, and thank God I did because I sent you a photo today, which I want you to put in this. But Stephen Greer showed me his compass in his hand and
Hmm.
another compass in his other hand. And one was pointing north that way, and the other was pointing north this way, opposite.
Mm.
And I went, oh my God, counter rotating vortices. But I still hadn't gotten lefties data until 2015,
Right.
16. So I really still didn't know what I was looking
Yeah,
at, but I
yeah.
knew counter
So,
rotating.
what I find puzzling about this is because, and it almost seems like it's a living entity, right? Because obviously you've got that energy that creates the image or the message, but then seeing, these two compass would suggest that it's still happening, like at that moment, like days later. So there is still that energy, and this is probably explains why you're getting the hairs coming up on your arms and things like that. So
Yep.
how long does this last for? Until the crop's like finished, grown again or cut, or what happens and why?
Well, the crop circles stay all summer long until August. When the farmer mows their crop, they mow out the crop circles.
Hmm.
So in my last few years, they were making crop circle beer in England and crop circle bread. So they were starting to figure out how to make a business out of their crop circle wheat, but they would also put their little coin box at the entrance to the formation. The farmers were great. They let us come in, they let us do photos, and they just had a sign saying, "We lost a few acres of wheat. Please put 10 pence in the box or whatever. Please make a donation to help us with the loss of the crop,
Mm.
and don't step on the wheat.
Yeah.
Walk in the tram lines."
Yeah.
So there's an etiquette to going in crop circles, and we were all really respectful. And in 100 crop circles, and many nights I went in when nobody else would. Again, I would fly when nobody else would. But when you come from America, you want to take advantage of every hour of every
Absolutely.
waking moment,
Absolutely.
you know? Yeah, so I did it all. But the night that I went in a crop circle with my friend who now owns, I'm pretty sure she's doing it again this year, the Crop Circle Research Center in Wiltshire. I meant to call her, but she hasn't picked up, and I hope she's still doing it. But the trick that you need to know as a new crappie
Hmm.
is that you want to get there the day they happen if you can.
Okay.
Now, the farmers have kind of cracked down and they're not being as friendly as they were when I was going. But the reason that I got such great footage was as soon as we heard about a crop circle, I bailed.
Mm.
I was there within the first hour after it was announced at the research center. So when I was going, we had this thing called the Silent Circle, which was our center. And we'd go there every morning as early as we could get there. And Charles Mallet was the head. I don't know if he's still around, but he ran the research center and he spoke with the pilots as soon as they flew over all of Wiltshire, all the way to Stonehenge, all the way to Warminster. I mean, they just fly all over and report there's a new crop circle at this GPS, site. And then they'd take a photo or they would just report it. And then it would go to the research center. And as long as I got there early, I was one of the first people in every crop circle. And somehow I got on the good girl list. And so I was in what they called the first line of action.
All
So
right.
when Charles would get the call, me, Monique, actually, Monique wasn't in it back then. She was a newbie. But Barbara Lamb, me, and Janet Osabard got the call early from Charles. And we would fly and we'd
Mm.
get there, and it was ecstatic and spiky
Mm.
and energized. And the photos and the film was meticulous because we'd get there before a lot of, shall we say, careless tourists that didn't know the etiquette
Mm.
of being careful not to change the look of the wheat,
Yeah.
change the flow. And you mentioned something that I found very advanced, which was the lay of the crop over
Yeah.
itself.
Like woven, like
That's
plaited.
yes, that's another aspect of the languaging of, it's not just the pictogram that you see or the spinning information that you might be smart enough to gather, but there's also the lay of the crop. And when you're looking at green crop, it's very supple. You
Mm.
can bend it, you can braid it, you can make a necklace out of it or a hat. But when it's brown, it's brittle.
Mm.
So when I see brown, amazing crop circles, that wasn't an easy pitch.
Right.
And
Right.
when you look at the formations in the center, I call them a centerpiece, and they're artistic and they're woven and braided and standing and I mean, amazing.
Mm.
In brown, brittle wheat, you can't do that as a human,
Mm.
in my opinion.
Why?
So
Why do
I'm
you?
totally convinced.
Why do you think there are particular hotspots? For example, Wiltshire.
Great,
Why there?
great questions. I love it. Almost 95% of every crop circle documented has been sitting over a ley line, which is a direct line on a map between two sacred sites. Wiltshire, Somerset, Stonehenge is like a spider web of
Right.
uh, ley lines, ley lines, because there's so many ancient sites
Uh huh.
and sacred stone circles
History.
and
Yeah.
temples, that are made of stone mounds and stuff, where the pilgrims or the pilgrimages of sacred people, spiritual people, walked across Europe. to go to these sacred sites. And so they hold the energy of the elders. And the energy, I think, is really raised in this area, or it was before, shall we say, the recent conquest of the world. But it was massively generous when I was going 2006 to 2014 filming, and we were welcomed with open arms. And for instance, Barbara Lamb, who's got to be in her 90s now, still answers her phone, still flew to a gig. I'm like, Barbara, really? I got a show I want you to do. And she's like, yeah, she doesn't sound serious enough. I only do real.
Mm.
Like, that's where I'm at now. And
Mm.
you have such a loyal audience, and you've done so much work on crop circles. But you're like me after six
Well,
movies.
I've got to be honest with you. I touched on crop circles a couple of times on the channel, but when I saw this crop circle pop up in Wiltshire, I was like, I've got to do it because I've touched, and like yourself, it's opened my eyes. At first, I just thought, oh, it's cool. It's a crop circle. Oh, is it aliens? You know. But then actually going there and learning more about it, it's so much more complex than I originally thought. You know, it's like the new one in Avebury. Is it Avebury? I think it is. You've seen it. In fact, you sent me the email, right? Thank you very much. And some people were tweeting me at it. I don't want to talk about it too much because I've not. First of all, I've not gone there. I don't think we can get access just yet. But I haven't looked into it as much as I would like. However, there was one thing that was quite interesting about it. What's your thoughts on the Anunnaki? Because
Same thing as reptilians. I'm not interested. I don't believe they have anything to do with crop circles. A lot
the
of
only reason I
people,
say is because I've got this book, and people are talking about the resemblance with this particular crop circle. I got this book
people are,
a while ago. Actually, it's the Anunnaki Chronicles, and in there was this. Um,
huh,
yeah,
isn't that interesting?
and it's pretty much depicts what's
It's
in.
similar, but it's the balls don't go evenly around like they do
No, they
in
don't. But it's
formation.
something about the same planets.
It's similar.
You've got Mars, Earth, Moon, Venus, and each one signifies each circle of this particular crop circle. And this is why I didn't really want to talk about it too much because I've got to look into it a little bit more. But when people saw that image, they immediately thought of this image from the Anunnaki, which I thought was quite
And when
interesting.
you and when you deciphered the one that happened on my birthday, um, May 18th this year, and then you brought it down to some guy said, "Oh, it's the swastika." Here's my answer,
Oh,
because I
that's
think
all
this
right.
is
Yeah, 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 yeah.
here's a really important
Let me
piece
just
of
stop you
information.
there. I want to just tell the audience what we're referring to here. So the mini documentary video that I did with the crop circle visit, somebody messaged me, emailed me, and basically broke the image down and rebuilt it, and then noticed that there was the swastika inside of the image, which in UFO world community is actually, I think, like love, peace, and harmony. That's the original meaning in like Hindu and other cultures, and which is wrongly used by the Nazis apparently, and they want to claim it back. So that's just a bit of a recap. But go on, carry
Yeah,
on. What are you
all I
saying?
saw was a Celtic knot
Okay.
because of the time I've spent. And then I appreciated the work that your friend did, but the answer that I was given,
It was a
and it
subscriber.
was,
I don't know him personally. It's a
yeah,
subscriber. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I'm not buying it, but
Okay.
yeah, I mean, but I'm buying it for him because it was his perception. So if anybody sees any of my films, there's a line that comes up in every movie. And it was only because I made them the text script, if I wrote a script at all, at 3 in the morning when I was not very conscious. And every single movie, you will hear these two sentences. And in my opinion, this is why I never say anybody is right or wrong reading what that crop circle means, unless it's a binary code that you can read.
Hmm.
It's
Okay.
right there. But the pictograms, such as this, the sacred geometric forms, everybody looking is going to see differently. And the words that were brought to me for every film, I think really say what it is that I would want to say. But it wasn't me, it was the messenger from the earth herself. And what happens in every film is I say these two sentences about crop circle meanings. We offer the information. Your perception is up to you.
Hmm. Okay.
So here we have this God given bit of information, this sacred geometry, this hummingbird, this rising phoenix with flames in the bottom crop circle. Like, what? Yeah, it was real precise. You could tell that's the message. But somebody else would look at it and see a swastika.
Hmm.
Or somebody else would look at it and see completely something else.
Hmm.
And so the truth is, depending on your frequency, you're going to see a different meaning in
Okay.
all these formations because it's a language we all understand, but people have different perceptions of reality.
Okay.
So I never said anybody was wrong. I just say, this is what I see.
Hmm. Hmm.
Tell me what you see in the past. Now I don't want to know because people are too angry. But
When I was in that particular crop circle, I met some lovely individuals that, like yourself, they call them like croppies. They go around everyone. They're hunting these things, and
I saw your group. They were lovely.
yeah, they were really nice people. And we mentioned briefly about just seeing this image has an effect on the person, the soul, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you how much you choose to perceive. A lot of people will just blow it off. Other people will just stare at it until it gives them the information. And I think a lot of people that now have evolved in the last bunch of years might look back at the archives of crop circle images and go, oh my God, how did I not see that?
Mm, mm,
And in my opinion, looking at dates and times of different formation arrivals, we've been given information that is so timely, like that one that I talked about in the field with the huge telecommunication tower. Why would the Earth herself choose to put it in a field where they could tell the world, look what we
yeah,
saw?
yeah, yeah.
And nobody got it. So a year later, there was the Chilbolton crop circle. Now that one was also binary code, and I'll make sure and send you an image so that if you decide to put images in while we're talking,
Mm,
this is the Chilbolton crop circle a year after the alien face and the disc. It was in binary code, and it was in a field in Chilbolton, 8 miles from the alien face and the disc. And not coincidentally, it was in a field with a huge telecommunication tower once again. So what we have here is the earth saying, people, this is important. And I know you can all read it because it's in binary code. I put it in writing.
mm.
So the Chilbolton one was this regurgitation, rude word, but of a message that two of our scientists in Puerto Rico, the Arecibo big, huge telecommunication dish, had sent out to M13, this star cluster in space, 300,000 miles away, and we saved all this
Light years,
information.
yeah.
Yeah. So we gave them all this information about our planet, our people, the shape of our bodies, our elements, all the different elements that we have on Earth, the population number, our DNA strands. There were 9 different sections of data. And at the bottom was an image of the Arecibo Tower, how we communicate. And so we sent that out into space, and all of a sudden, we got the Arecibo message back. with 9 specific changes to our data. And everybody was like, what? Oh
Yeah.
my God. They answered us. So now we're thinking ETs,
Hmm.
and it might be.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So you think
But
that's
they had
different
a,
to Mother Nature, right? So because it's not the Earth this time talking, it could be something else from somewhere else.
or the earth herself going, let me spin it in a way that they can handle.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's give them data that they knew we sent. Frank Drake and what was his name? I'll remember it later, the scientist that sent the data. But when it came back, the body had a bigger head and a smaller body.
Mm.
They had a different population. And our elemental chart, they added silicon,
Hmm.
which powers all of our computers. We didn't have that in our lineup of elements. So that was remarkable at the turn of the century. And then the DNA strand was a little bit different. And their telecommunication tower was completely different. It was this scatter form that blasted out on both sides. And all of us that looked at it went, oh my God, that was a crop circle the year before.
Wow.
So they gave us their telecommunication scatter pattern, and then they put it in a crop circle. And it was so close to looking like the one we sent to M13 that it was really a clear message that there is consciousness out there, and it is now being laid in a crop circle in a place where a telecommunication tower exists so that the humans could maybe be smart enough to share the information with the world. Did they? No.
Mm. Do you think we'll ever get to a stage of where, you know, the people that needs to be take these crop circles? Well, I would say there's some people that take them extremely important messages but keep it hush, and some that, like yourself, that see these messages and want to shout to the rooftops. Do you ever think we're going to get to this balance of where we say, okay, look, we need to start looking into these, right? Take the cover off. Here we go. Are we going to find that balance and just agree that these things are messages from Mother Earth, like you say?
Well, the combination of your audience and you putting me on the show is going to help because I really think that Penny gave me the only information that was worthy of anybody I've spoken with because she did the real research.
Mm.
And they even came up with a machine that could save our food supply at the lab. And then Lefty really got wanked. I
You've got a
mean,
picture of that, actually, haven't you? You just showed it at the
I
beginning.
do. Yep, I do. And I want your watchers, I want some farmers or scientists, simple, to figure out this charge density plasma, two metal sheets with a sticks between them, and you put the seeds in the middle. And the charge density plasma machine is set at 30. I don't know what that means, but it's set at 30, plugs into the back, and it hits the seeds with charge density plasma. And then the seeds, all of a sudden, after lots of experimenting, delivered lots more food. And the top one is the seeds normally, the bottom one is the seeds that entered the machine. See the difference?
Mm.
Massive. They did carrots because carrots are really kind of hard to grow big, little, big, little. Big difference with the
Wow.
charged density plasma. They went from little to medium. And then when they figured out something really important, which probably nobody else knows, Lefty found a bunch of seeds in the back of his drawer when he was cleaning his lab one day, and scientists don't clean their labs very often. So he found this envelope in the back of his drawer that had old seeds that had shriveled and dried up, and they'd been in there for months. And he went to throw them away, and that little voice said, mm-mm, don't do it. So Lefty was like, huh. And that's how I made my movies. The little voice would go, go there, and I would do it. So he got the little voice, and he still said, oh, look at these seeds. No proper seedsman would use these. And
Mm.
he went again to try and drop them in the bin, and the little voice said, mm-mm, don't. So he put it in the germination tank, in the germination chamber, and he started to grow those dried out, almost dead seeds that were shriveled. And that's when they hit 400% more food and biofuel with the rest of their research. So they had to take the seeds, almost kill them. And then that just little fist in there going, I'm just going to live. It worked so hard to survive that that's how it created the super plants and super seeds that are going to be able to help us have this much more natural food when we come around to it. So pretty fascinating.
It is.
That we actually have everything we need. We just need to quit pretending it doesn't exist. Like you said, do you think they'll ever open the door to reality?
Mm.
I think right now we are going through like a birthing canal of consciousness. And 20, 25 years ago, I did a tour when I was just a young hippie chick with a lady named Patricia Cotarobulos. And she brought in 103 spiritual light workers, we used to call ourselves, from around the world. And we met in Barcelona. And we toured and we did all this work together, blessing sacred sites. But I remember what she told me, which got me through until today and tomorrow, which is everything is coming to the surface to be exposed and healed. Prepare yourselves. We
Wow.
are in it right now. But the good news is, I live in America. I have total faith in our evolution. We are in it to win it. And we are seeing the worst behavior of humans. And I find when I pray now, I also apologize. I apologize to God for how people are acting. I apologize to the earth for the chemtrails and all the things going on because we're all one and we have everything we need. And when I look at the crop circles, 150, 175, dwindling down to only three in the beginning of June, we're 8 days in, only three? There should be dozens. My heart says, if the earth could speak, she would say, we've offered the information. Your perception is up to you.
Wow.
So, what's holding us back
Mm.
is perception and lies. And when I look at the people that are, crop circles are fake, and I'm famous, and I'm funded, so I'm right.
Mm.
That's all I hear.
Yeah.
If I listen to that. And when I go to YouTube and I look at crop circle experts, I'm like, why don't you just read Lefty and Penny's book and then tell the truth? But I don't think they mean to not know. I
Mm.
think that they just haven't been blessed by the experience. And I was so blessed by the experience. And to make my final film, Crop Circle Diaries, and to tell the whole story, I told some weird stories in here, but also about William Levengood, that I met him a year after he died and that he showed up twice.
Mm.
First time I didn't see him, the psychics did, but the second time coming through the wood door, I will never forget because I saw it.
Yeah.
I huddled under the sheets and I said, I know who you are, and I'm not scared. And then he said the same thing he said in front of the women, which I did orchestrate this, and I'm really glad you're here. I know that I was chosen to do this job, and I loved every second I was in the crop circles, but I did not enjoy having three distributors for my movies that acted like they hated me, and all these guys in the industry that wanted to pretend they were fake and that my balls of light communicating was fake. And when I went to a Native American event up in the mountains in Colorado, I bumped into Bear Cloud, who's been a few of my movies. And he said, Oh, Patty, I'm so glad to see you. I have some footage for you that you need to have. And I thought, that's off the wall. And he said, But you got to come to Sedona to get it. I won't ship it. And I said, Well, of all things, I'll be there in 14 days. I'm going. And so when I went to his house, he not only had incredible UFO photos, but he had the negatives.
Right. Okay.
The negatives.
Wow.
Famous, famous photos. And I'm sitting there in the presence of all this, feeling like, oh God, I hope the walls don't break in. This is huge. And he said, here. And then he said, and I've got a video that you need to see because they've really been rude to you. And I said, okay. So he said, I paid $3,000 to do this interview with a man named Jim Delatoso. Okay, I'm saying it because it's in my movie. And so I said, oh, Jim's the one that said my communication was fake. And he went all big saying, Patty Greer's lying. It's all fake and blah, blah, blah. He said, well, then you're going to like it that much more here. And he gives me this thing that he spent $3,000 to Jim to do his interview. And Jim said the absolute opposite of everything he ever said about my work. And he said the Oliver's Castle footage where the balls of light lay down the crop circle in seconds is absolutely real. And it's every bit as real as the Phoenix lights that happened a few years before. And those, the crop circle, he said they're going in counter-rotating vortices. He didn't say vortices. He didn't have all the right words, but he said counter-rotating spin created. And I was like, you lying sack. Bear with me. Sorry, Jim, but you lied about me. And then you told the native, a beautiful Native American master, the truth. And
Mm.
he gave it to me. And he signed a piece of paper saying Patty Greer has permission to use it. So I hold up the mirror and I tell people, don't waste your time lying to me. Now I just walk away. It's like, wait, I'm not done talking. No, you're not done lying. Goodbye. I'm not interested. I mean, um,
Do you know,
living through being poisoned by mercury, being poisoned by uranium by an idiot, getting hit with a directed weapon because I kept telling the truth. I didn't know about deep state. I didn't know that I had to hide the truth and pretend to be a dummy like the rest of them at the gigs. But I do know that when I went to the gigs, I would teach people how to see plasma in the sky. And 80% of them screamed, oh my God, I see it. So the training that I had in the crop circles, I brought to all my gigs until they told me to stop coming to the gigs because people were waking up.
right.
And
So
yeah,
the orbs that people capture in the sky, are these the same as the ones that are creating the crop circles?
nope. Crop circles are created by balls of light. And a ball of light is different than an orb. A ball of light creating a crop circle is the base of a spinning vortex.
The energy, like.
So it's different. An orb is more transparent, translucent. It's got pictures and patterns, whereas a ball of light is very dense and thick.
Hmm.
So
I think that
I
you
just,
have so much more to talk about just in the UAP, UFO, however you want to call it nowadays. Do you think you've got enough to talk about for another sit down chat? Because I wouldn't want to muddy the waters when we've gone in so heavily with the crop circles, then start not having enough time to go into the UAPs. Would that be something that interests you?
oh, you asked me if I have a chapter of my book. Honey, I got the book.
Okay.
I've got an entire movie called Orbs and Light Beings.
Oh my. Right. Okay. So we need another
And
chat.
um,
It's been amazing. It's been absolutely amazing. I do think we should. I mean, we've been chatting for like 2 hours. It's so good.
have we gone that far?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my. Like
Yeah.
I said, for me, unfortunately, I say no to most crop circle shows, interviews. I only want to do very few because it's threatening.
Hmm.
And I don't want any more trouble in my
No.
life. I have NDAs with the pieces of crap that did this to me, but I'm alive.
Yeah.
And I'm alive because I think God wants me to be. Thank you. But the earth herself is like one of my besties. And I feel like I've had this incredible protection. I don't do crop circle shows hardly ever unless it's a worthy person. You are so
Oh,
authentic.
bless you. Bless you.
And your audience of almost a million friggin' people
I
around the
know,
world.
right? Yeah.
And I read comments because I do a lot of interviews on C60, Evo, my
Okay.
company. And in our interviews, it's all science because we are the lab. We're the only lab making ESS 60, which is the good stuff.
Hmm.
And we've been at it for 34 years. They have, not
Wow.
me.
Yeah.
I'm Patty Greer on X, on Facebook, I call it face plant. My website, where you can stream my movies for $5 each for a week or 10 days or a year, whatever. Once you get the link, you can just use it anytime, is Crop Circle Films with an S.com. And today I finally, for the first time in, I don't know, 10 years, updated my bio on the About page because I really am different than when I put out the website 20 years ago, 15 years. And I didn't talk about any of the suppression, which I think is a very sad truth. But it also says, damn, girl, your movies are telling the truth. No wonder they work so hard. I even had this guy from Wikipedia. 30 years he worked for Wikipedia. Comes up to me at a gig. He said, can I do your Wikipedia bio? And I said, I'd be honored. He said, I've written for them for 30 years. I'll send it to you to approve before it goes public. And I said, thank you. 2 months later, I get a letter from him. Only article in 30 years Wikipedia will not publish.
Oh, really?
Oh, I'm telling you, the suppression, it just says, uh-huh, daddy. Uh-huh, daddy. Patty told the truth. La 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 la. We hate her because she told the truth.
I think the next time I go and visit a crop circle, I'll be seeing it and feeling it in a different way. I do appreciate it.
Oh yeah. So
Thank you so
Crop Circle
much.
Connector, cropcircleconnector.com.
Mhm.
All of you should join if you're interested in crop circles and join the lifetime membership. It's not expensive, but get into the archive because that's where you got the whole history. The other guy that's got a fabulous collection is temporarytemples.uk. And his name is Steve Alexander. He flies in the expensive helicopters when I fly in the microlight.
Oh,
And
okay.
so he has killer footage, and I paid him to use his footage in some of my films. Temporarytemples.uk, Steve Alexander, and cropcircleconnector.com. Those two will give your audience everything that's been a crop circle documented over the last 20, 30, 40 years, all in one place. It's fabulous. And read it like a book
Yeah.
and just open your mind, have a cup of tea or a glass of wine, and just get deeper and deeper because the data is incredible that we've been gifted.
Patty, thank you so much.
Pleasure.